A month before our anniversary, my husband said, the greatest gift would be if you just left the world. So I did exactly that. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I didn't pack bags in the middle of the night or announce anything dramatically. I stopped the funding. I took back everything that was quietly keeping his life comfortable. And then I walked away. What I left behind on the table wasn't revenge, but it changed everything. Before I tell you how one sentence unraveled my marriage and exposed what had really been holding it together, do me a quick favor. Support this channel. Drop a comment about where you're watching from or what time it is for you, and stay with me. Stories like this only reach people who need them when others help carry them. The night he said it, he didn't raise his voice. He didn't look angry. He leaned back against the kitchen counter, phone in his hand, scrolling like my presence was background noise. The greatest gift, Mark said casually, would be if you just left the world. Not die, not disappear, just left. The refrigerator hummed behind him. The clock ticked. Everything else stayed normal, which somehow made the words land harder. I stood there holding a plate I hadn't finished washing, my hands still wet, my mind taking a second too long to catch up to what he'd said. What? I asked. He shrugged. You know what I mean. Things would be easier. Easier for who? He didn't say. He didn't have to. I was 34 years old, married for 11 years, and I had spent most of that time believing that endurance was the same thing as love. I dried my hands, set the plate down, and went to bed early. No argument. No tears. No dramatic moment. That was the first time I realized something important. When someone finally tells you they'd prefer a world without you in it, the loudest response isn't anger. It's clarity. Our anniversary was 4 weeks away. We hadn't celebrated properly in years. Life had slowly shifted from partnership to management, and somewhere along the line, love had started showing up as transfers, payments, and quiet fixes. Mark had been between opportunities for almost a year. That was his phrase. Between opportunities, between paths, between versions of himself. Meanwhile, I was firmly planted between due dates, mortgage, utilities, insurance, emergency savings. He called it support. I called it marriage. But looking back, it was funding. The sentence he said that night didn't come out of nowhere. It was the final note in a song I'd been pretending not to hear. The jokes about me being too serious when I asked about bills. The sighs when I mentioned timelines. The way he said I was controlling whenever I asked for clarity. I told myself this was normal. That marriages went through seasons. That patience was love. But patience, when paired with silence, turns into permission. The next morning, Mark acted like nothing had happened. He kissed my cheek, grabbed his coffee, and asked if I'd seen his charger. I handed it to him. Then I sat at the dining table and opened a notebook I usually used for grocery lists. On a clean page, I wrote exactly what he'd said to me, word for word. I didn't add feelings. I didn't explain it away, because memory edits things to protect your heart. Paper doesn't. That was the day I stopped asking myself why he said it, and started asking myself what would happen if I actually did what he wanted. Quietly, completely, and on my terms. The morning after I wrote his words down, I woke up before my alarm. Not because I was anxious, because I was alert. There's a difference, and I hadn't felt the second one in years. Mark was still asleep, sprawled diagonally across the bed like he owned more space than he did. I lay there listening to his breathing and realized something unsettling. If I disappeared tomorrow, he wouldn't miss me. He would miss the systems I ran, the payments that happened on time, the reminders, the safety net. I got up quietly, made coffee, and sat at the table with my notebook. On the first page was the sentence he'd said. On the second page, I'd started listing what I paid for. That morning, I added dates. Not guesses. Not rounded numbers. Real ones. Mortgage contributions going back 5 years. Utility payments when his opportunity gap stretched longer than planned. The emergency fund I'd refilled more times than I could count. Each entry was boring, precise, undeniable. I wasn't building a case against him. I was building a map for myself. By the time Mark woke up, I was dressed for work. He yawned, rubbed his eyes, and said, "You're up early." "I've been up early for years," I said. He didn't catch the edge in my voice. Or maybe he did and chose not to. At work, I couldn't focus on my screen. Not because I was distracted, but because something inside me had shifted gears and wouldn't downshift again. I called the bank on my lunch break. Not to accuse. Not to threaten. Just to ask questions. "What happens," I said calmly, "if I close a joint account?" The woman on the phone explained it, step by step. Her tone was neutral, professional, unemotional. It felt like oxygen. That night, Mark was unusually cheerful. He suggested ordering takeout, joked about a show we were watching, even touched my knee absent-mindedly like he used to. I watched him the way you watch someone whose language you suddenly understand. He wasn't cruel because he hated me. He was careless because he believed I'd never stop cushioning the fall. 3 days later, the joint account was empty. I moved the remaining balance into an account under my name only. I didn't drain it dramatically. I didn't slam doors. I simply returned my money to myself. The bank clerk asked if I was sure. I said yes without hesitation. That afternoon, Mark's card declined. I wasn't there when it happened, but I knew the moment he realized. The text started coming in quick bursts. "Hey, did something happen with the account?" "My card isn't working." "June." I didn't answer right away. When he came home that evening, he didn't ease into it. "What did you do?" he demanded, dropping his keys harder than necessary. "I changed how money moves," I said. "You can't just do that without talking to me." "I did talk," I said calmly. "You told me what would make you happy." His jaw tightened. "That's not what I meant." "It's exactly what you meant," I said. "You just didn't expect me to listen." He accused me of being dramatic, of creating chaos, of trying to control him. I let him talk. When he finished, I said, "If the only thing holding our life together is my money, then it deserves to be tested." That's when the tone shifted. "You're trying to hurt me," he said. "No," I replied. "I'm trying to see what exists when I stop saving you." He stared at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. The next week was quiet in a way that felt staged. Mark avoided direct conversation. He sulked. He stayed out later. He told friends I was going through something. I didn't correct him. I kept documenting. Every notification from the bank. Every unpaid bill reminder. Every time he hinted that I should fix something. 2 weeks before our anniversary, he finally exploded. "You know what?" he snapped during an argument that wasn't really about dishes. "You've changed. You used to care." "I still do," I said. "I just don't fund disrespect anymore." That's when he said it again. "If you just left the world," he muttered, "everything would be simpler." That time I didn't flinch. I walked to the bedroom, packed a small bag, and left. I didn't tell him where I was going. I didn't need to. I checked into a modest hotel across town and slept better than I had in months. The next morning, I sent one message. "I'm safe. I'm stepping back. Direct anything financial or legal to email." That was it. The house funding stopped completely that day. And that's when Mark panicked. Calls, voicemails, messages swinging between rage and pleading. "You're overreacting. You're ruining everything. We can talk about this." I didn't answer. Instead, I made an appointment with a lawyer. Not because I wanted revenge. Because I wanted structure. Because disappearing doesn't mean vanishing. It means removing access. And what I was about to put on the table would make that very clear. But he had no idea yet just how exposed he already was. When I sat down in the lawyer's office for the first time, I didn't feel angry. I felt organized. That surprised me more than anything else. The office was quiet, neutral colors, nothing dramatic. The kind of place designed to calm people who came in carrying chaos. I slid my notebook across the desk and said, I want to understand what belongs to me, what I'm responsible for, and how to leave without burning my own future down. Alan Avery didn't interrupt. He didn't rush me. He listened the way professionals do when they know this isn't just about money. When I finished, he flipped through my notes slowly. You've been very thorough, he said. That's rare. I had practice, I replied. He explained things plainly. What joint responsibility meant. What it didn't. What I could stop immediately. What needed documentation. What silence could protect me from. And what it couldn't. I didn't ask how to punish Mark. I asked how to disappear. Cleanly. By the time I left, I had a list. New account confirmations. Written notice drafts. A timeline that didn't rely on emotion. And most importantly, boundaries that had legal weight. That afternoon, I emailed Mark exactly one thing. Going forward, all financial matters will be handled in writing. I will not be resuming shared funding. Please confirm receipt. No accusations. No explanations. Just a line drawn in ink. The response came within minutes. This is extreme. You're acting unstable. Everyone thinks you're overreacting. That last one was my favorite. Everyone. The invisible jury that always seemed to exist when someone needed to pressure a woman back into compliance. I forwarded the messages to my lawyer and didn't reply. Within 48 hours, the consequences started stacking up. A late mortgage notice, a utility warning, a credit card reminder Mark had ignored. Each one arrived like proof, not panic. Mark left voicemail after voicemail. You're sabotaging us. You're humiliating me. You're going to regret this. What he didn't say was the truth. He had never built anything that didn't lean on me. Friends started reaching out. Carefully worded texts. Well-meaning check-ins. Suggestions that maybe I should be the bigger person. I answered none of them. I had learned something critical. Explanations invite negotiation. Silence holds the line. 2 days before our anniversary, Mark showed up at my hotel. I hadn't told him where I was staying, which meant someone had told him. That too went into the notebook. He looked tired, unshaven, panicked in a way I'd never seen before. You can't just vanish, he said. This isn't how marriage works. This is exactly how marriage ends, I replied. He tried everything. Remorse, anger, mockery. You think you're better than me now. You'll come crawling back. You don't know how hard this is for me. I listened quietly. Then I said, You told me what would make you happy. I'm honoring that. His face changed at that. That was the first time he understood this wasn't a bluff. That night, I returned to my apartment. Not the house. My apartment. Small. Clean. Quiet. I slept on the floor with a blanket and felt free. The next week unfolded like a slow collapse. Mark missed a payment. Then another. The bank called me. I answered once. I am no longer managing this account, I said calmly. Please direct correspondence appropriately. They tried to pressure me. I documented it. My lawyer stepped in. The tone changed immediately. That's when Mark tried a new tactic. Concern. He told people I was not myself, that I was spiraling, that he was worried about my mental health. I heard about it through a friend who sounded uncomfortable even repeating it. That was the moment I understood what he was really willing to do. If he couldn't access my money, he'd try to access my credibility. I didn't confront him. I prepared. I gathered records, emails, bank statements, messages showing calm consistency. When he formally suggested mediation due to my instability, my lawyer smiled. Let him, Alan said. Paper loves the truth. The mediation meeting lasted 20 minutes. Mark arrived theatrical, exhausted, visibly wronged. I arrived with documents. He talked about feelings. I presented facts. When the mediator asked if there was evidence of erratic behavior, Alan slid my timeline across the table. Dates, actions, Consistency. The room shifted. Mark stopped talking. Afterward, in the hallway, he hissed, "You planned this." "No," I said. "I prepared." There's a difference. That was the day he realized I wasn't disappearing because I was weak. I was disappearing because staying had been costing me everything. And the most dangerous part? I wasn't done leaving yet. Because what I was about to take back wasn't just money. It was the story he'd been telling about me. And once that cracked, nothing would protect him anymore. The foreclosure notice arrived on a Tuesday. Not dramatic. Not loud. Just an envelope with heavy paper and careful language. I opened it at my kitchen table, the same place where I'd once balanced grocery budgets and anniversary plans. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I read it twice, then slid it into my folder labeled documentation. Mark called 3 hours later. "You knew this would happen," he said, voice raw. "You set this up." "No," I replied. "You ignored it." He swore. Loud. Angry. Desperate. "You could fix this with one transfer." One. One always becomes forever, I said. That's why I stopped. He tried guilt next. What about our history? What about the sacrifices I made? What about us? I waited until he ran out of breath. Then I said the truth he didn't want. You don't miss me. You miss the access. Silence. The foreclosure process moved forward exactly the way the bank said it would. Predictable. Boring. Relentless. I learned quickly that institutions don't care about emotional narratives. They care about signatures and timelines. I didn't interfere. I didn't rescue. I let consequences do what they were designed to do. That was when Mark escalated. He showed up at my workplace. Security stopped him before he reached my floor, but not before half the lobby saw the scene. The raised voice, the pleading, the accusation that I was destroying his life. HR called me in gently. We're just checking that you're safe, they said. I am, I replied, and I have documentation if you need it. I always had documentation. Mark sent long emails after that. Pages of them. Apologies wrapped around blame. Promises tied to pressure. Declarations of love that arrived far too late. I didn't answer. My lawyer did. Each response was short, factual, and devastatingly calm. Direct all further communication through counsel. No financial assistance will be provided. Harassment will be documented. The word harassment changed everything. Suddenly, Mark stopped sounding confident. Friends started choosing sides. Some quietly disappeared. Some tried to mediate. Some told me I was too cold. I didn't argue. Cold women survive. The house went to auction on a gray Friday morning. I didn't attend. I took the day off work and walked until my legs ached. When my phone rang, I already knew who it was. The property sold, Alan said. Loan satisfied. Remaining proceeds are in escrow, pending claims. My claim. The money I had put in. The money I had carried. The money everyone had pretended wasn't real. Mark left a voicemail that night. You got what you wanted. Are you happy now? I listened once, then deleted it. A week later, I drove past the house by accident. A moving truck sat in the driveway. Boxes on the lawn. Mark standing very still, like someone trying not to be seen. I didn't stop. Some endings don't need witnesses. The legal process took time. Weeks of verification. Statements. Calculations. But paperwork doesn't lie, and patience is louder than panic. The wire transfer came on a Monday morning. I stared at the number longer than I expected. It wasn't just money. It was proof. Proof that I hadn't imagined the imbalance. Proof that generosity had a cost. Proof that leaving hadn't ruined me. It had restored me. I paid off what I needed to. I funded what mattered. I put the rest somewhere safe and quiet. Mark tried once more. This time, through a mutual friend. He says he just wants closure. I smiled at that. Closure is what people ask for when accountability arrives. No, I said. He already has it. The last message I ever received from him was short. I hope you're satisfied. I didn't respond, because satisfaction wasn't the goal. Freedom was. I wake up now without checking my phone for emergencies that aren't mine. I make plans without budgeting someone else's irresponsibility into them. I breathe, and sometimes late at night, I think back to the moment he said those words. The best gift would be if you just left the world. I did, not by disappearing, but by refusing to stay small, silent, and solvent for someone else's comfort. And the world I walked into on the other side, it finally belongs to me. The silence after everything settled was unfamiliar, not empty, not lonely, just quiet. For years, my life had been measured in reactions. Calls to answer, problems to fix, emotions to manage, money to move. Even pain had been loud, demanding attention like a fire alarm that never shut off. Now there was nothing pulling at me. The first week after the funds cleared, I kept expecting the other shoe to drop. Another call, another accusation, another emergency that would somehow become my responsibility. It didn't. Mark didn't call again. His friends stopped messaging. The noise faded like a storm moving off the coast. And that's when the grief showed up. Not the sharp kind, the quiet kind. I grieved the version of myself who thought love meant endurance. The woman who believed that staying proved something. The wife who measured her worth by how much she absorbed. I didn't miss Mark. I missed who I thought I was supposed to be. I took a week off work and stayed home. I cleaned out drawers I hadn't touched in years. Old receipts, old notes, cards I'd kept out of habit, not affection. One afternoon, I found a photo of us from our early years. We were sitting on the floor of an unfinished apartment, eating takeout with plastic forks. I looked hopeful in the photo, not naive, just open. I studied her for a long time. Then I slid the photo into the shredder, not out of anger, out of closure. I didn't need to keep proof of who I used to be to honor who I'd become. Life didn't transform overnight into something magical. It became steady, predictable, safe. I started sleeping through the night. I cooked for myself again, real meals instead of quick fixes. I walked in the mornings before work, feeling my breath instead of rushing past it. People noticed. "You look lighter," a coworker said one day. "I am," I replied. She nodded, like she understood exactly what I meant. The first real test came 2 months later. Mark's sister reached out. She hadn't spoken to me in years, not really. Polite at holidays, neutral during conflicts, silent when things mattered. Her message was careful. "He's struggling. I know you don't owe him anything. I just thought you should know." I stared at the screen for a long moment. Old me would have asked questions, offered help, tried to smooth the edges. New me typed one sentence. "I hope he finds support." Then I put my phone down and went back to my book. That was the moment I knew I'd crossed the line for good. Not because I didn't care, because I finally cared about myself more. I redecorated the apartment, slowly. No rush. No impulse buys. Each piece chosen because it made me feel calm. Grounded. I hung a mirror in the hallway and caught myself smiling at my reflection one evening. Not because I looked different, but because I felt recognizable. I had my name back. A year passed, then another. People stopped associating me with the fallout. I became just me. The woman who laughed easily, who said no without explaining, who showed up on time and left when she wanted. I started mentoring younger women at work. Not formally, just coffee conversations, quiet guidance. They asked questions I used to ask myself. How do you know when it's time to leave? How do you stop feeling guilty? What if you're wrong? I never told them what to do. I told them what I learned. Pay attention to who benefits from your silence. Notice who calls you strong when they need you weak. And remember, love that requires you to disappear isn't love. One afternoon, while sorting mail, I found a letter addressed in handwriting I hadn't seen in years. Mark. I didn't open it right away. I made tea. I sat down. I waited until my hands were steady. The letter was shorter than I expected. No apologies. No accusations. Just this. I see now that I broke something I can't fix. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know I understand why you left. I folded the letter once. Then again. Then placed it in the recycling bin. Understanding doesn't erase impact. Growth doesn't rewrite history. And closure doesn't require participation. The last time I saw him was accidental. A grocery store. A narrow aisle. A cart between us. He looked older. Tired. Smaller somehow. He opened his mouth like he might speak. I nodded once. Then walked away. My heart didn't race. My chest didn't tighten. There was no urge to explain. That was the victory. Not the money. Not the house. Not even the freedom. It was the absence of pull. The day I realized I was no longer orbiting someone else's gravity. Sometimes, late at night, I think about that sentence he said. The best gift would be if you just left the world. And I understand now what he meant. He didn't want me gone. He wanted me quiet. He wanted me compliant. He wanted the version of me that funded his comfort without asking for respect. So I gave him exactly what he asked for. I left that world, and I built a new one where my presence is not negotiable, my boundaries are not punishments, and my life is not a resource to be drained. If you've stayed this long, thank you for listening to my story. If any part of it felt familiar, you're not alone. And if you're standing at the edge of a decision you've been postponing, remember this: leaving isn't the end. Sometimes it's the first honest thing you do for yourself. Before you go, do me a small favor. If this story resonated with you, consider subscribing and leaving a comment, maybe just where you're watching from or what time it is right now. It helps these stories reach others who might need them, the way I once did.